One of the modelling projects that I've been wanting to do for some time is making some small streams for use with my 6mm Wars of the Roses models. Now these, I've been to the backfield of Bosworth and the streams are pretty shallow, generally pretty muddy. Nowadays they have reasonably steep banks, but I imagine that at the in the 15th century these would have been a lot more shallower. So what I wanted to recreate was these small streams that provide some sort of hindrance to movement, but not a lot. So we're not talking about large rivers. And having decided to go for brown, dirty water, this is a finished example, a section, which I think looks really effective against the 6mm models. But I'm going to need about 10 foot of this to cover my table for the streams that I want to show. So I thought I'd have a very quick video today to show you how I've made this and how I'm going to replicate this and make lots and lots more. Now the basic material that I've started with is felt. We've got an example here of some wool felt which I've used for the fields that I did recently, and this is the sort of more synthetic felt that you get sold for children artwork and stuff. You can get it in the works pound a sheet or something like that. I've got a load of this stuff, so for this particular project, rather than use my limited supply of wool felt, I decided I would use some of the cheaper felt. You can see I've been doing some experimenting with it, but I've got a load of this, I've got a load of sheets of this, and the first step is painting it. So I have used again a very cheap acrylic paint that I got from, well, you can see £2 for a tub. I bought loads of this when it was even cheaper. I think I ended up paying something like £1.50 a pot for this. And I use this brown as my base coat for heels that I've made and various other things. And really cheap. It's very thick, so you can dilute it down a little bit with water. And the pigment density is very good. So, for something that is such a cheap material, I find it actually a very good product to use. So all I've done is I've painted the top side of some of this green felt, so you can see underneath it's still green. And the reason I don't want to paint back, I don't want it going all the way through, is because it's this felt surface that makes this material so useful. Because on my cloth mat that I have, it just doesn't move around. It grips the surface a lot better than using acetone or wood or other plasticky type materials as the base. Using a bit of felt just means it sort of grips the mat that you're going to be playing on, and so it doesn't move around as much. This wool felt is better for that, but it is a little bit more porous, and so I suspect that if I was to paint it using this brown, it would go through this more, and then that sort of defeats the object, because what I want is the other side to be felty and grippy. But I've made some examples with this material, and it seems to work really well, and it still seems to have enough hairiness, for want of a better phrase, to it. It grips to my fleece mat that I'm going to be using as my main battle mat for my Bosworth games. So having painted this material, it does take a long time to dry out, so I painted the whole sheet and then cut the strips out that I wanted, rather than trying to paint each individual strip and just getting paint on everything. So I painted basically an A4 sheet in this brown, allowed it to dry overnight, and then the next step was to cut out various strips like this, about a centimetre wide. You can do obviously different size, but for the streams that I want to make, a centimetre wide seems to be the perfect size. So now we need to add the water, and yes, I'm going to do that first because everything else goes around it. So here's one where I've put the water on, and what I've used is Vallejo's, let's pull my camera back, Vallejo's water texture, and I've applied it using a syringe. Basically I filled up a syringe, and then I've just gone down and squirted a little bit on there and rubbed it in with the nozzle of the syringe and made a fairly thin layer of this water texture stuff. Now this takes a long time to dry, so again, leave it overnight. It goes on white, so when you look at the material, it doesn't look very promising as a material, so I don't think you can see the stuff there. It's white and gloopy, but it dries completely clear. And it's consistent enough that you can put it in a syringe and apply it where you want, and it's a lot quicker than brushing it on. I find you could use a brush, but this gives a nice smooth even finish. So this is the method I've been using. It works just perfectly well, and you don't actually use a lot of the water texture on a load of strips, because it's very thin. So again, this is another stage that takes a long time to dry. You need to leave this overnight, a good 6 to 8 hours to dry thoroughly, and it will be clear when it's dry. The next step is applying some turf or grass. Now I've used a mixed turf blend I've used on a lot of my models. It's a light and a dark turf mixed together with some flecks of yellow and white in there, just a small pack of that mixed in with it, so it's my own particular blend. So whatever you prefer, I like the dual colour, it just looks more natural to me, and I've applied that using WSS basing glue. That dries really solidly, but it remains flexible and rubber-like. So even though I've applied this on here, you can see that this remains flexible, and it hasn't gone all the way through. It's still normal felt at the back, a little bit of seepage now here and there, but for the most part this has gone on really well. And once it's dried, it dries in a couple of hours, then you can move on to what is the last stage in effect, and that is adding some bushes. Now all you need to do is to add some bushes, and these are the usual little clump foliage things in a range of different colours, soaked in some of the basing glue, and then placed along the banks of the river. Don't have to be, you can add as much or as little of this as you like. Some of this is still drying, so that's why it looks a little bit white and misty. Now it must be noted that when you do this, sometimes if it's touching the river section, it turns the water misty again, but don't panic, that will dry and go clear again once you've left this to dry overnight. So as you can tell, this is quite a long-winded process, but then you do a whole batch and leave them overnight after you've painted the felt. Do the turf, leave it a few hours. When you apply the rivers, you need to leave that overnight, so you can do it over a few days. So this will all dry fairly, will dry completely clear, and then an example of a finished piece is the bit you saw at the beginning. The water looks nice and dark and muddy, but looks shiny, so as it should do. It's water, with plenty of bushes down the edge. And let's say the piece, despite the fact that it's had a lot of the basing glue on, is still very flexible, and it's got the nice felt underside, which is going to grip onto the mat when you use it and won't move around too much. Now I've made some short sections while I tried out the method and made sure that I was happy that it worked. And now that it has, I've even done a little bit of experimenting, by the way. I've added some rocks in a particular area, so there's various things you can do. You can make wider sections, maybe you want to do a fold type thing, but the thing is this technique can be used on a range of size rivers. For me, I just wanted streams, but the end result, it looks really nice. And I'm now going to do some longer sections, some 18-inch sections of river where I want long straight stretches, and a wider range of junctions and U-bends and oxbows and all the rest. So I've now made a load of these different sections with different shapes and a load of straight sections. Earlier in the video I did mention that these are about 1 centimetre wide, perhaps a little bit more actually. When I measure them it's more like 15 millimetres wide, but whatever works for you. You can scale this up to do wider streams and rivers if you want, but this was specifically for my 6mm stuff. I just wanted the very small streams so that I had a network of them across the landscape. What I'll do is I'm going to complete this lot, and then I'll come back and show you all of the finished sections, so you can see how it's worked out. I mean, I'm pretty happy with the test pieces that I've made so far. They look pretty good, I think. They certainly do the job of what I had in my mind. and as I say, they seem fairly robust. Nothing's falling off of them. They're flexible, and more importantly, they've got that felt underside, so it will grip on the cloth surface that I'm going to use. I mean, if you're going to put these down on some of the neoprene and nylon backed mats, they will probably slide around a bit because they're quite slippery surfaces. Or if you've got a hard surface, you know, they are going to slip around a little bit. But on the fabric mats, the felt, the fleece mats that I particularly have bought, they really do grip quite well, more than enough so that you don't have to pin them down or anything like that. So, you know, hopefully the terrain ain't going to move around too much when you're moving your figures about, which is just what I want. I want the terrain to stay where it is. I've had too many games where some of our players have had miraculous abilities to move mountains and streams and forests with a nudge of the elbow. Hopefully that ain't going to happen when this stuff is sort of adhering itself to the game map. So here are the finished sections. I've done all of the stuff that I need. There's about 19 foot, maybe a little bit more, of river sections here, like I say, with plenty of bends and junctions of various types, and I've even managed to make a few little ponds in the same sort of style. And I'm currently working on a marsh, again using the same sort of technique, felt with the basing glue and the water effect for the stream running through the middle of the marsh. Same principle, the felt will stick to this fleece mat that I'm using. I mean, they really don't move around, you know, sort of picking them up. So I'm really pleased with these, and I hope you like them too. I hope it's a nice, simple, and easy build, something that is more than within the capabilities of pretty much most modular wargamers, if you want to make your own terrain. And I think this looks, I'm really chuffed with it. I think this is as good as anything I've seen for commercial purposes, and more to the point, it's so simple I can make plenty more if I need to.